What's going on? What's going on, everybody? It is the only sports podcast. That's right, the only sports podcast. I'm Will. Usually Casino's over there, but he could not record tonight because I am recording right after the end of the 49ers Lions game. And I said it on our last podcast. If you didn't listen to it, I'll reiterate what I said here. I said I am picking the Chiefs and 49ers. Casino picked the Ravens and Lions. I said I was picking the 49ers and Chiefs because we as football fans cannot have nice things, right? And so we're going to have to suffer through a 2-week time period of let me take a drink. A 2-week time period of nothing but Travis Kelsey. I'm sure there will be some New Heights, the podcast with his brother. It'll be Jason Kelsey. It'll be Travis Kelsey. It'll be their mom. It'll be Taylor Swift. It'll be about their relationship. It'll obviously be about Mahomes' legacy in relation to Brady. It'll be Andy Reid's legacy in relation to Bill Belichick, nonstop. Right on the 49ers side, it'll be all about revenge, all about how they didn't win last year when Purdy got knocked out. Purdy was in this game. It'll be about Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. Like, we know what the narrative is going to be for this Super Bowl, right? And then on the other hand, if it was Ravens, it would have been all about Lamar Jackson. If it was Detroit, it would have all been about the Lions never even going to a Super Bowl, now being in their first one. So I thought, again, as an Eagles fan, but when my Eagles aren't in it, I just want to see an interesting story, like when it was Matthew Stafford and the Rams against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. I was super into that Super Bowl because both of those stories were compelling to me, right? So as a Eagles fan, my probably top 3 most hated teams right now in the NFL are Cowboys, 49ers, and Chiefs. So for 2 of them to be in the Super Bowl, I mean, my wife, shout out to my wife and her friend Sam. Her friend Sam literally texted her and was like, "So as an Eagles fan, who are you guys rooting for in the Super Bowl?" And I just said, I hope both teams just like their planes don't take off and they just never land in Vegas. Like, I don't, again, this isn't even just, I think if you can go back to the beginning of the playoffs, I think the least interesting matchup would have been Chiefs 49ers. Every other team would have been new or fresh or different or would have had much more compelling cases to be like 2 weeks of buildup for a Super Bowl. But no, instead, we get the Super Bowl, what we saw 3-4 years ago. I believe it was 2020, right? Where it was 49ers, Chiefs again, or maybe it was 2021. I can't remember. But yeah. So we get Chiefs 49ers again. Only difference is now you have Purdy instead of Garoppolo. Obviously, the Chiefs don't have Tyreek Hill, but they still have Kelsey. They still have Mahomes. They have a better defense. 49ers defense has at times looked worse than it's probably ever has in this Kyle Shanahan, you know, resurgence as the 49ers, as the 2-time team that's gone to now the Super Bowl twice in his tenure. That defense has looked rough since D'Amico Ryans left at times, but at times it's looked really good. Now, with this 49ers team this year, we saw them lose much more games than they were expected to. You know, obviously, we talked about it on the podcast where it was Purdy had a concussion some of the time in those games, which led to them losing. They did not play a good game last week against the Packers. This game, it looked like the momentum was swinging back to not having a great game, right? In the same vein that they did with the Packers, it looked like, this is going to get off the rails quick. But let's talk about the game itself, where it was the 49ers coming back from a 24-7 deficit in the second quarter or in the second half of the game to win 34-31. Purdy was 20 for 31, 267, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But really, I feel like what helped win this game with Purdy because he didn't have a great game, but he did have some pretty good escapes from the pocket. He had 5 carries, 48 yards, average almost 10 yards a carry when he broke the pocket. So Purdy had a decent game. I wouldn't say it was anything crazy. The defense really though in the second half, I mean, just that Lions defense. We talked about how they were a liability for most of the season, especially when it came to tackling. I mean, I don't know what some of these attempts at a tackle were in the second quarter. I mean, they were hitting 49ers guys 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, but just like hitting them, like shoulder checking them where it was just like in the open field. I don't again, this Lions team, I know Casino was freaking out when we were messaging each other during this game about the Dan Campbell not kicking the field goal and instead going for it on in the third quarter where it would have only been a 7-point game. But again, you can't. This was my rebuttal to that and to the Dan Campbell, criticism of how he coached this game is this is how he's coached all season. And for the majority of the time, it works. And when it doesn't work, you can't give him shit for things that have worked in the past, right? Like you live or die by being aggressive. He won more than he lost this season by being aggressive. But guess what? There were some times where he lost when he was aggressive, and this is one of them. Uh, the Lions in the fourth quarter, I mean, we'll talk about that Ravens Chiefs game, but it just really felt like the momentum shifted and then everything went into the 49ers' favor. I mean, that what should have been an interception bounces off the Lion guy's hands, goes right to Ayuk, and then that leads to a touchdown. It was almost a touchdown from him running it in at that play, but again, that just comes down to the Detroit bad luck, right? They've had it their entire franchise, never been to a Super Bowl, aren't going this year again. And you see plays like that, and you're just like, man, I don't know what Detroit did to the football gods, but they angered them. But as far as the 49ers, that defense was great. Again, just really stepped up in the second half. Goff, uh, this was the argument for why the Rams traded Goff and wanted Stafford, right? Even though this Lions team beat Stafford, Stafford still has a Super Bowl from that trade, and Goff probably should have one, but he ran into the buzzsaw of what was the last of that Patriots dynasty Super Bowl. But yeah, this is a perfect example of why you need an elite quarterback, of why there were question marks about Goff because on a couple key third downs or fourth down passes, he was, I mean, that fourth down that basically could have potentially won them the game or given them a chance to win the game where all they needed was a field goal. And then the 49ers right after that go down and score a touchdown. So to tie up this game, they just needed a fourth down completion. I believe it was 4th and 8, 4th and 3. I can't remember. The game's literally just happened. But Goff rolls out of the pockets being chased, but he still has time and he has about 3 guys open and then he just short arms it. And guy it's a turnover on downs. 49ers go right down the field. Now all of a sudden it's a 10-point game. Detroit goes right down the field, scores a touchdown again on a fourth down, which was one of those things where it was like, oh, should they be kicking the field goal here and going for the onside kick? But I guess regardless, they would have probably had a better chance at getting a safety if it didn't go through. So again, that's one of those analytical things where it's like, well, you need 10 points regardless. So might as well get the touchdown when you're a yard short than have to get a field goal and then get a touchdown with like a minute left, no timeouts. Or I think they had one timeout at that point. But yeah, I feel bad for Detroit. I feel bad for the Lions. Again, Casino's Super Bowl pick before the start of the season was the Lions. And I was like, you're crazy. And they were within 3 points of potentially going to the Super Bowl. So again, that first half was a masterclass, but then credit to Kyle Shanahan. I made a joke on Twitter. Go follow us, the only sports cast on Twitter. I made a joke that Kyle Shanahan is the perfect coach to have in these situations when you're down big at half. He's only won one of 36 games or whatever. Well, now he's won two in a row when he's been down. So finally breaking that curse. He only has about what 34 more to go before he's 500 at that. But yeah. I also think Casino didn't record tonight because he would be super salty. I'm not salty. Like I'm not really mad about the Chiefs 49ers Super Bowl. I just think it's boring. I just think it's a Super Bowl as a football fan I'm not really interested in because again, I saw their first Super Bowl and that one wasn't that great, but again, that was at least fresh and new because the Chiefs were a new team, the 49ers were a newer team going into the Super Bowl and it was like can Mahomes get his first one? Can Andy Reid finally win the big one? Like there were storylines in that I was interested in. And again, when my team's not in it, I want interesting storylines for people to root for. Besides Purdy in this game, I don't know who the average football fan is supposed to root for in this game. I mean, I guess if you're a big fan of dynasties and the same team over and over again, which I called Casino out when me and him were messaging each other because he was getting really upset that the Chiefs were going back. And I was just like, yeah, how do you think people who hated the Patriots felt for 20 years? Like now that it's happening to you, it's all of a sudden much worse than what was happening to everybody else. So at least in that vein, it's better again. But this narrative where now we'll transition to Chiefs Ravens, this narrative that Patrick Mahomes is the best to ever do it and all this kind of stuff, and he's only 28, blah, 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 blah. Tom Brady at this point in his career had more Super Bowls than Mahomes currently does. And if he wins another this Super Bowl this year, which he's has a 50-50 shot to, right? He will then have as many Super Bowls as Tom Brady did at 28. So this like notion where it's like, man, Patrick Mahomes unrivaled, never been seen a better quarterback than this guy. It's just like, yeah, except the guy who when they played twice, he beat him, including once in the Super Bowl. Like Brady's obviously, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is going to have a much longer career to try to win, you know, 6 Super Bowls to compete with Tom Brady for GOAT. But at this moment, again, it's the LeBron argument where everybody can make as many LeBron is better than Jordan cases as you want. And then all the other opposing person who has to do who likes Jordan over LeBron and then who likes Brady over Mahomes. You just point to the rings, right? And you say, if this was the same for both players, then it's no debate, right? But if it's this guy has all these accolades but doesn't have enough rings, like that's the end of the argument in my book, right? I'm a to be the best ever, you have to also have a bunch of hardware to go with it. That's why I've always loved Dan Marino. I've always loved Jim Kelly, but that's why they're never in the conversation, right? Jim Kelly went to 4 Super Bowls in a row. We never talk about him as an elite quarterback compared to, Montana, Mahomes, Brady, because he didn't win any of them. So you can't use that argument where you're the GOAT because you get there, but then you never win, right? And also, there's going to be a time where Andy Reid retires. There's been rumors if they win the Super Bowl, he retires after this season or maybe next season, or, there's going to be a time where Reid retires. And then again, in the Brady Belichick era, we have that 10-year period where they weren't in the Super Bowl. So will Patrick Mahomes avoid that? Is it just going to be every year, every other year that Patrick Mahomes is in the Super Bowl? I mean, at this point, yeah. So we'll see, but let's talk about the Ravens Chiefs game. I mean, I don't know what the Ravens saw on film where they just decided we're going to completely abandon the run game just pretty much from the get-go. The Ravens had 81 rush yards for the entire game, but they only gave Lamar Jackson 8 carries, right? I mean, that's just from him basically breaking the pocket. I think only 1 or 2 of those were like designed runs. Gus Edwards, they gave 3 carries. Zay Flowers, they gave 2. And Hill, they gave 3. So combined, they gave their number 1 rushing attack in the league, they gave them 8 carries. Why? Again, why? Gus Edwards was averaging almost 7 yards a carry per attempt. So why were you not just running the ball down the throat of this Chiefs team? Again, this game started 7-7 going into the second quarter, and then the Chiefs scored 10 points. Baltimore never scored another point after this until late in the fourth quarter when they get a field goal, and this is a 7-point game. So the entire second half, they shut out this Chiefs team. You're averaging with your number one running back and your running quarterback 7 yards a carry for both. You decide instead to have Lamar Jackson pass the ball 37 times. Why? Again, it's was a one score game for most of the game. So you're going, and again, it felt like the Chiefs had the ball on offense. I mean, let's look at the time of possessions because it felt like they had them twice as much as the Ravens did. So time of possession, yeah. Chiefs had it for 37 minutes, 30 seconds. Ravens had it for 22 minutes, 30 seconds. So pretty damn close to almost double the amount. And again, you shut them out of the half. They score a touchdown in the first quarter. They score 10 points in the second quarter. Do not really even get close to scoring for the rest of the game, right? It wasn't like the Bills one where they were right on the goal line and then they fumble, because that happened to the Ravens, where Zay Flowers, again, in those scenarios, like, why? Zay Flowers is trying to dive for the end zone from like 5 yards out. He probably would have made it if he didn't just leave himself completely exposed to have the ball knocked out. That's what happens. Zay Flowers, it ends up being a touchback. Chiefs get it. And then, I mean, that was one of the last gasps of that Ravens team, because Ravens got a field goal after that. So they go in with that touchdown. It's 17-17. And now all of a sudden you're playing the Chiefs at home in OT, right? And then you have Lamar Jackson throwing into triple coverage to his backup tight end. Now you can say, oh, it was clearly pass interference, which I think it was pass interference. But again, why are you throwing that ball to begin with? There's three people around your one guy, and your backup tight end is literally blanketed in the middle of three Chiefs players. So why are you even risking it? You're risking a 3 versus 1 play in hopes that the refs are going to call a pass interference that affects the Chiefs. Like, do you watch film? Do you watch football? Do you see why that's insane to think the Chiefs would? And then again, there's a play later in the game on a third or fourth down call, I can't remember, where a Chiefs player is straight up just mugging a Ravens player. The announcers, the Gene Steratore comes in and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's pass interference. That's defensive holding. That's every penalty in the book, but we're not going to call that." But again, you don't there's a viral clip online that went I can't remember who was saying it, but it was a basketball player basically being like, game sevens are the hardest, because he was talking about when I believe he was on the Sixers playing the Heat. I think it was either Sixers playing the Heat or Sixers playing the Celtics, and he was excited because it was one of his first times in the playoffs. He was excited and he was telling his teammates, like, "I'm so excited, we're going to be playing a game 7." And then his teammates were like, "Why are you excited? Like, we're playing a game 7, which means we got to win by 10 to win by 1." And then he was like, "What does that mean?" And his teammate told him, would you, as a basketball fan, rather see the LeBron James Heat and Celtics with the big three play each other in the Eastern Conference Finals, or the 76ers play against, the Celtics or the Heat? And that's when he told, like, game sevens are geared towards what is the favorable matchup. Now, that being said, I do think that the Taylor Swift thing and the Super Bowl conspiracy logo thing played a little bit of a change of plans for the NFL's rigged group, which I'm not saying it is. I think that take has always been ridiculous. The NFL is rigged. I think There have to be way too many people complicit in it to just let that go out. But I just saw a post that said the Taylor Swift in the NFL thing has generated almost $400 million in additional revenue for the NFL. So to that crowd, I say maybe the only thing that beats Ravens 49ers with the whole colors and Super Bowl logo is a random addition of this pop star who now all of a sudden grants you $400 million extra than you already had. So to that crowd, for the conspiracy theorists, and I love a good conspiracy theorist, even ones I don't believe in. I love hearing and reading about them, right? Even though most of them uh I think are way too far fetched. This one, it's got some teeth in it. It's got a little bit of pizzazz to it, right? Where it's just like, oh, well, plans changed when Taylor Swift came into the picture because she made $400 million for the NFL. And then it's also that thing where during the game, they're just showing Taylor Swift on the camera for, I mean, an ungodly amount of time, just an unbroken shot. And then you see her mouth the words like, go away, please, which is credit to her because I also feel like she's as sick of being on camera as everyone watching is of her being on camera. So it's the perfect marriage of the person on camera doesn't want to be on camera and the people watching her doesn't want her to be on camera. And the NFL is just like, who cares? Kelsey jerseys are through the roof, right? And then speaking of Kelsey, I mean, I don't know what he does all season, well, especially this season, right? Because everybody, including myself, is like, he's fallen off. He's having some rough games. There's some games where he completely disappears. Both playoff games, he came back with a vengeance. In this one, 11 for 116 yards, averaged almost 11 yards per reception, one touchdown. But it was, I mean, every single third down. I don't know how the Ravens game plan was, let's not run the ball and let's leave Travis Kelsey wide open on all crucial third down plays, right? So third down efficiency, I mean, the Chiefs were 8 for 18. 1 and 2 on fourth downs with the one to MVS to seal the game on, again, just a great call. You can discredit the Chiefs all you want. I think Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelsey are reaching levels of obnoxiousness not seen in the NFL, maybe ever, in terms of non-fans of the Chiefs just hating their guts for the way they act on the field and off the field. I'm not saying like with the Taylor Swift thing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying the viral video that went viral before the game where Mahomes is like kicking Justin Tucker's tee away and like Travis Kelsey's throwing stuff of his like around to get him out of there. And you can see uh Justin Tucker's kind of just like, what are you guys doing? Like, it was such a weird video to go viral. And then, Kelsey, apparently Kelsey can taunt after every single catch he makes in the game, but Zay Flowers, when a guy is holding onto his leg, cannot get him off the leg. And God forbid, I mean, this is what I saw on Twitter. You can do all the taunting you want, but do not spin the football. If you spin the football, that is just a giant middle finger, apparently, to the world because, it's almost as bad as when Randy Moss fake mooned the Packers and Joe Buck wanted him assassinated on the spot because it was, I don't know, children or so. I don't know. It's like apparently a giant middle finger to the world to taunt people when you're playing football games, but who knows? But yeah, Ravens, I mean, they had 4 or 5 shots to win this game. They lose. Then it's Chiefs. And then the Lions 49ers game starts, and it's almost right away, like 24-7 Lions going into halftime. And you're like, okay, well, at least it's going to be Lions Chiefs. So there will be one team to root for in the Super Bowl, right? Everybody's firing off their myself included, tweets of being like, oh, I thought all you needed was Purdy. All you needed was Purdy. Turns out all they did need was Purdy because he brings them back. Funny thing was, most 49ers fans on Twitter, you can go look up the tweets if they haven't been deleted, were just like, I told you Purdy was trash. I told you we needed anybody but Purdy. So they were giving up on him at halftime of that game. And then all of a sudden, then it's See, this is why we would have won last year, because Purdy, Purdy, Purdy. So again, the giant tonal shift and giant switch of that game at halftime was just exactly what the NFL wants, right? You want everybody talking shit in the first quarter, and then it switches, and then everybody else is talking shit to the people who were talking shit, right? Like that's the goal. And now the goal was to get Taylor Swift into the Super Bowl. She's in. I'm not even saying, again, I don't think, I'm not blaming anything on that game on the referees or like calls or anything like that. Even the calls that did happen, I guess could have helped the Ravens, but what also could have helped the Ravens was running the ball and Lamar Jackson not throwing into triple coverage. And just, again, I don't know how you're John Harbaugh and you go into this game with the game plan of, we're the number one rushing attack, so we're going to try to run the ball as little as possible. Again, if you tried to run the ball 15 times and you're averaging, and you have 1 yard total, then okay, abandon the run and try some other stuff. You're not even attempting to establish the run, and you're just going all passing, all on Lamar Jackson's back. And then it's just, Lamar Jackson had a pretty rough game. 20 for 37, 272, one touchdown, one interception. It felt like he also carried the ball 8 times for 54 yards, as we talked about. It felt like he was running for his life every couple seconds. And that's what makes this Chiefs team scary all year. Is this is by far the best defense that Mahomes has ever played with. Mahomes, again, I don't like the guy. I didn't like Brady either, right? It took for Brady to retire for me to finally respect what he'd done, right, in the league, because I'm not a Patriots fan. I'm not a Chiefs fan. But 30 for 39, 241, one touchdown. I mean, he just put the team on his back like he always does and was just slinging it. uh Kelsey as well, and then the MVS fourth quarter dagger that eliminated the Ravens officially. I mean, what else can really be said about this game? You can't, again, you can go back and look at the Bengals game, you can look at the Eagles Super Bowl and be like, Chiefs were bailed out, and I can give you the play they were bailed out on. They were never bailed out in this game by anything other than playing great defense and just uh the Ravens being dumb enough not to run the ball, right? So that's pretty much, I went longer than I wanted to, but it's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about here. So congrats to Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. I'm not a fan of either of you. Both of your teams I hate, but as fans of both these teams, I mean, you got to be excited. How can you not? Also, as an Eagles fan, I know that when other people hate your team, you don't really give a shit, right? As long as your team's winning, who cares? So congrats to both of you guys, to any of those fans of those teams watching. I don't care who wins or loses. I don't really have a vested interest in either team. I would like to see both of them lose. I do think I'm kind of leaning towards the Chiefs of who I want to win and who I think will win, but yeah, I don't know. We have 2 weeks to talk about it, right? And yeah, so we're in for 49ers Chiefs round 2. 2 weeks of Taylor Swift coverage, which also I gotta give props to Taylor Swift because she's clearly as over it as everybody else is. So I don't even blame her. It's all television networks and NFL and blah blah blah. But yeah, 2 weeks of that. Didn't get 2 weeks of Taylor Swift versus Eminem, which would have been pretty funny and interesting in my book. I feel really bad for the Detroit Lions. Ravens I feel less bad for because they blew it. Lions kind of felt like they just had all this steam and momentum going in, and then it just turned on a dime and they could never get it back. And the coach's aggressiveness wasn't working. They had so many crucial drops, especially on third and fourth down. I mean, hit Lions receivers right in the hands in stride, and they just dropped it. The unlucky bounces, the interception that turned into a Brandon Ayuk touchdown, basically. I mean, just as bad a luck as you can, but that's, what being a Browns fan and being a Lions fan and Jets fan, that's what happens to those three franchises. Probably some other ones I'm forgetting to mention, but yeah, congrats to the 49ers. Congrats to the Chiefs. I just hope it's a good Super Bowl. I hope it's better than their first one because I wasn't a fan of that one at all. And that one actually had a rooting interest and didn't hate the 49ers. So that game should have interested me. And that game was just boring. I didn't like that game at all. So hopefully this one's just better. It's more interesting. It's more fun. It'll be interesting to see Purdy and all the discourse of him going into that game because that's basically been all season, right? So, yeah, there we have it. 49ers Chiefs round 2 in the Super Bowl. This has been the Only Sports Podcast. I'm Will. That's usually where Casino is. We'll be back later in the week to I believe we're going to do Tuesday to do our episode for this week. So, yeah. Congrats, 49ers and Chiefs. Ugh.